Part 11 of Wonder. This is Via's point of view, an apparition at the door. I wonder if anyone in the class knows what an apparition might be. Once I got up in the middle of the night because I was so thirsty and I saw Mum standing outside Augie's room. Her hand was on the doorknob, her forehead was leaning against the door, which was ajar, open. Not ajar, one word, A-J-A-R, ajar, means open, a little bit. She wasn't going in his room or stepping out, just standing right in front of the door as if she was listening to the sound of his breathing as he slept. The hallway lights were out. The only thing illuminating her was a blue nightlight from August's bedroom. She looked ghost-like standing there, or maybe angelic, like an angel. I tried to walk back into my room without disturbing her, but she heard me, and she walked over to me. "Is Augie okay?" I asked. I knew that sometimes he would wake up choking on his own saliva if he accidentally turned over on his back. "Oh, he's fine," she said, wrapping her arms around me. She walked me back into my room, pulled over the covers, and kissed me goodnight. She never explained what she was doing at the door, and I never asked again. I wonder how many nights she did stand at the door, just thinking, wondering whether to go in or out. And I wonder if she ever stood outside my door like that. Maybe she's hoping Mum would stand outside her door like that and feel a connection. "Can you pick me up from school today?" I said the next morning, smearing some cream cheese on my bagel. Mum was making August's lunch, American cheese on whole wheat bread, soft enough for Augie to eat, while August was eating his oatmeal at the table. Dad was getting ready to go to work, and now that I was in high school, the new school routine was going to be that Dad and I would take the subway together in the morning, which meant his having to leave 15 minutes earlier than normal. Then I'd get off at my stop and he'd keep going, and then Mum was going to pick me up after school in the car. I was going to call Miranda's mother and see if she could drive you home again, Mum asked. "No, Mum," I said quickly, "you pick me up or I'll just take the subway." "You know I don't want you taking the subway by yourself yet," she answered. Now, if you remember, she's already taken the subway by herself because she told Miranda, "It's okay, I don't need your mum to take me home." But Via's mum still thinks that she's never taken the subway by herself. Subway is the MRT, and that Miranda's mother brought her home. She's kind of getting herself in a pickle. It's a good idea not to lie. Yeah, you get yourself in too much of a pickle. Don't lie, okay? "You know I don't want you to take the subway by yourself yet." "Mum, I'm 15. Everyone my age takes the subway by themselves." "She can take the subway home," said Dad from the other room, adjusting his tie as he stepped into the kitchen. "Why can't Miranda's mother pick her up again?" Mum argued. "She's old enough to take the subway by herself," insisted Daddy. Mum looked at both of us. "Is something going on?" She didn't address her question to either one of us in particular. "You know, if you had come back to check on me," I said spitefully, "like you said you would, you'd know." "Oh no, Via," said Mum, remembering now how she completely ditched me last night. She put down the knife like she was using to cut Augie's grapes in half, because grapes are also a choking hazard for Augie. "I'm so sorry I fell asleep in Augie's room, and by the time I woke up..." I know, I nodded indifferently. Mum came over and put her hands on my cheeks and lifted my face up to look at her. "I am really, really sorry," she whispered, and I could tell she was. "It's okay," I said. "Via, Mum, it's fine. This time I meant it." She looked so genuinely sorry, I just wanted to let her off the hook. She kissed and hugged me, then returned to the grapes. "So, is something going on with Miranda?" she asked. "Just that she's acting like a complete jerk." Don't use that word. Remember, this author is really powerful writer. You can use it in writing, but you can't use it to somebody. Miranda's not a jerk, Augie quickly chimed in. She can be, I yelled, believe me. Okay then, listen, I'll pick you up, no problem, said Mum decisively, and she swept the grapes into the snap bag with the side of a knife. That was the plan all along anyway. I'll pick Augie up from school in the car and then we'll pick you up. We'll probably get there about 3:45. No, I said firmly before she had finished. Isabel, she can take the subway, said Dad impatiently. Is that the first time we've learnt the mum's name? Isabel, she can take the subway, said Dad impatiently. She's a big girl now. She's reading War and Peace, for crying out loud. What does War and Peace have to do with anything, Mum answered, clearly annoyed. It means you don't have to pick up her in the car like she's a little girl, he said sternly. Via, are you ready? Get your bag. Let's go. I'm ready, I said, pulling on my backpack. Bye, Mum. Bye, Augie. I kissed them both quickly and headed towards the door. Do you even have a Metro card? Mum asked. Of course she has a Metro card, answered Dad. Yeah, Mama. Stop worrying so much. Bye, said Daddy, kissing her on the cheek. Bye, big boy, he said to August, kissing him on the top of his head. I'm proud of you. Have a good day. Bye, Daddy. You too. Dad and I jogged down the stairs and headed down the block. Call me after school before you get on the subway, Mum yelled at me from the window. I didn't even turn around, but waved my hand at her so she'd know I heard her. Dad turned around, walking backwards for a few steps. War and Peace, Isabel, he called out, smiling as he pointed at me. She's reading War and Peace. It's his nice way of saying she's 15, she's a big girl now. She can do this. Next chapter, Genetics 101. Both sides of Dad's family were Jews from Russia and Poland. Papa's grandpa fled the pogroms and ended up in New York City at the turn of the century. Not this century, the last one. Tata's parents fled the Nazis and ended up in Argentina in the 1940s. Papa and Tata met in a dance floor in New York while she was in town visiting a cousin. They got married, moved to Bayside in New York, and had Dad and Uncle Ben. Mum's side of the family is from Brazil, except for her mother. My beautiful grands and her dad, Augusto, who died before I was born. The rest of Mama's family, all her glamorous aunts and uncles, they lived in Alto Leblon, a ritzy suburb south of Rio. Grands and Augusto moved to Boston in the early 1960s and had Mum and Aunt Kate, who were married to Uncle Porter. Mum and Dad met at the university and have been together ever since. Isabel and Nate, like two peas in a pod. That means they're really, really similar. They moved to New York right after college, had me a few years later, moved to a brick townhouse and a hippie stroller capital of Manhattan when I was a year old. I guess that information means more if you're American. Not one person in the exotic mix of our family from all over the world had ever shown any obvious signs of having what August had. I pored over grainy sepia pictures of long dead relatives and babushkas, that's Russian, black and white snapshots of distant cousins and crisp white linen suits, soldiers in uniforms, lady with fancy hairdos. I haven't not once been able to detect even the slightest trace of Augie's face in all the faces. Not one. But after August was born, my parents underwent genetic counselling. Some of you would know that. Science, your genes are what's inside you, yeah? They were told that August had what seemed to be a previously unknown type of facial dystocius caused by an autosomal recess mutation in the TUF1 gene, which is located on chromosome 5. This is all scientific. I don't expect you to know any of this. This is for scientists. Complicated by characteristics of OAV spectrum. Sometimes these mutations occurred during pregnancy. Sometimes they were inherited when one parent carried that gene inside them. Sometimes they're caused by an interaction of many genes. In August's case, the doctors were able to identify one of the single mutations that made war on his face. The weird thing is, though, you'd never know it from looking at them. Both my parents carried a mutant gene, not a damaged gene, but it's just a different gene. If you're interested, you can look that up on Brain Pop and things. a mutant gene, Gene. And interestingly enough, Fia said, I carry it too. The Punnett square. If I have children, there's a 1 in 2 chance that I will pass on the detective gene to them. That doesn't mean they'll look like August, but they'll carry the gene that got double dosed. Okay, so you know how you have the same color hair or eyes or whatever of your parents? That's called your gene, your genetic makeup, and it's what's inside you. And then when you have children, if you choose to have children, you pass on that information through genes or genetics inside you, okay? So it doesn't mean that they'll necessarily look like that or have that issue, that in Augie's case, the way his face is, but maybe 3 or 4 generations down, your grandchildren or great-grandchildren will still carry that gene, so one of them might have it. That doesn't mean they'll look like August, but they'll carry the gene that got double dose in August and helped make him the way he is. If I marry somebody who has the same defective gene, there's a 1 in 2 chance that our kids will carry the gene and look totally normal, and a 1 in 4 chance that our kids will not carry the gene at all, and a 1 in 4 chance that our kids will look like Augie. Bit of maths going on in there. If August has children with somebody who doesn't have a trace of the gene, there's 100% chance of probability that their kids will inherit the gene, but a 0% chance that their kids will have a double dose of it, like August. This video, this reading is all quite scientific, and geography. We've heard about where her family comes from, and now we're hearing about the gene pool, how that makes them unique. So they'll carry the gene no matter what, but they could look totally normal. If he marries somebody who has the gene, their kids will have the same odds as my kids. So 1 in 4 chance of having the gene, etc. This only explains the part of Augie that's explainable. There's that other part of his genetic makeup that's not inherited. It's just incredibly bad luck. Countless doctors have drawn a little tic-tac-toe grid for my parents, noughts and crosses, over the years to try and explain the genetic lottery. Lottery is lucky, right? If you win the lottery, it's just luck. And he, unfortunately, has got this gene. Geneticists, one of you might be one day, use this Punnett squares to determine inheritance, recessive dominant genes, probabilities and chances. And for all they know, there's more they don't know. They can try and forecast or think ahead to the chance, but they can't guarantee it to them. They use terms like, I'm just going to skip on here because this is a bit complicated. If you're going to read the book, you can find out more. I like the sound of science. I like how words you don't understand explain things you can't understand. There are countless people under words like germline mosaicism, chromosome rearrangement, or delayed mutation. Countless babies who'll never be born, like mine. Out with the old. Miranda and Ella blast off. Okay, now we're getting back away from science. Miranda and Ella blasted off. They attached themselves to a new crowd destined for high school glory. After a week of painful lunches where all they would do was talk about people that didn't interest me, I decided to make a clean break for it. Made new friends. They asked no questions. I told no lies. We just went our separate ways. I didn't even mind after a while. I stopped going to lunch for about a week, just to make the transition easier, to avoid the fake, oh shoot, there's no room for you at the table. Olivia, it was easier just to go to the library. Oh, there's no room at the table for you, Olivia, sorry. It just became easier for me to go to the library and read. I finished War and Peace in October. It was amazing. People think it's a really hard read, but it's really just a soap opera with lots of characters, people falling in love, fighting for love, dying for love. I wanted to be in love like that someday, and I want my husband to love me the way Prince Andrei loved Natasha. But I ended up hanging out with a girl named Eleanor, who I'd known from my days at primary school 22, though we'd gone to a different middle school. Eleanor had always been a really smart girl. Little bit of a crybaby back then. We all change. But nice. I never realized how funny she was. Not the laugh out loud dad type funny, but full of great quips, like really witty and fast. And she never knew how light-hearted I could be. Eleanor, I guessed, had always been under the impression that I was very serious. And as it turns out, she had never liked Miranda or Ella. She thought they were not so nice. It is interesting, you never quite know. Because you don't want to gossip and talk about each other. So you don't actually always know how your friends feel about each other. And you have to be a bit careful, because if you ask, it's a bit tricky, because then you'll become a bit of a gossip and it could become a problem. Anyway, she didn't actually really like them. Maybe she thought they were a bit rude. I gained entry through Eleanor to a smart kids table at lunchtime. It was a large group that I'd become accustomed to hanging out with, and a more diverse crowd. It included Eleanor's friend Kevin, who would definitely become class president someday, student council. A few techie guys, girls like Eleanor, who were members of the yearbook committee. Oh, that's a good thing to be. And the debating club. And a quiet guy named Justin, who had small round glasses and played the violin. And I thought he was super nice. When I'd see Miranda and Ella, who were now hanging out with the super popular set, we'd say, "Hey, what's up?" But we wouldn't stop, we'd move on. So we weren't mean to each other. Occasionally Miranda would ask me how August was doing. And then say, "Tell him I said hello." I never did this. Not to spite Miranda, be nasty, but because August was in his own world these days. There were times at home that we, August and I, never crossed paths. Okay, that chapter, that bit I read, was probably a little bit more that the authors put that in for people who are interested. It's about genetics and how Augie is like he is, and it's quite good if we are talking about that ourselves, because we're talking about how we're unique. And actually we're unique if we follow the history of our families. And for some people, the histories of families are unknown because maybe they're adopted, maybe they just have a mum or a dad, so they don't actually know that side. I know lots of people that just have a mum or just have a dad, so obviously they've had a mum or dad to make them as a baby, but then how do they don't know their history, their grandparents, great-grandparents. That's pretty common. Maybe like my family, they came out to New Zealand from England on boats in the 1800s. So obviously there's no internet and no way of tracking the history of that family. My dad really liked tracking and trying to find out the history of his family. And my mother's grandfather came all the way from Scotland, overland, and then on a boat to New Zealand. So you can see it's really hard to track who's who. And I don't know much about my family back there. So if I wanted to know the history of my genetics, it would be really hard to do. And then there are other families that have been for generations and generations in the same village or the same town. It just depends, right? So it's really, every family is super, super different. And for some people, you can find out from grandparents, parents, great-grandparents. And some people don't have that option. And they can just figure out from what they look like and their personalities and things, maybe a little bit about their family history. Anyway, this is about the science of how our DNA and our genetics and everything. But the rest of the story, I don't think it refers to that again. The next part gets quite exciting, and it talks about, well, it says Grands had died the night before Halloween, and she talks a little bit about Augie and what happens to Augie on Halloween. And you'll know that because Augie's already told his part of the story, and now we're hearing from Via. I hope you're enjoying it and you're not finding it too complicated, and you're thinking about how unique we are, and also how you would react if somebody who looks different or behaved differently were in our class.